Namaste, I am Brajesh, and in this video we will learn about measurement of risk. As we know about existence of risk in the stock market and mutual fund investments, it's important to understand and manage risk. So in this video we will learn about beta and standard deviations, which are the measurements of risk. Also, we will learn about how to compute beta from formulas and CAPM model equations using linear regression. We will understand linear and waveform representations of beta and how it is derived using a scatter plot. So there's a lot of learning coming up in this video. Do stay tuned till the end. Having known about the risk and types of risk in our previous video, now let's know how to quantify risk. Having understood the two types of risk, that is systematic risk and unsystematic risk, let's find out ways of measuring these risks. So we come across measures like beta and standard deviations, where beta measures the systematic risk of a stock against a benchmark. The standard deviation measures the total risk associated with that stock, that is unsystematic plus systematic risk. Before starting, let me just clarify that I will be using measures beta and standard deviation in context of stocks and mutual funds. Since a mutual fund is nothing but a portfolio comprising of many stocks, the beta of a mutual fund means the combined systematic risk of the stocks in that portfolio. So there is no difference in the calculational or analytical aspect of beta of a stock or beta of a mutual fund. Beta is the measure of systematic risk or sensitivity of a stock relative to a benchmark. It is derived as the ratio of returns of a stock or fund relative to the returns of a benchmark like Nifty 50 or Sensex. A benchmark's beta is considered to be 1 and beta of the stock is computed against that benchmark. Beta of a stock tells us how much movement the stock has with respect to a benchmark, and beta can be used as a predictive tool to predict a stock's return relative to that benchmark. A stock's beta is derived using some formulas and linear regression analysis. We will learn about all of them in coming slides. Now let's discuss standard deviation briefly. Where beta measures only the systematic risk of a stock relative to a benchmark, the standard deviation measures the total risk associated with the stock, that is, systematic risk plus unsystematic risk. Standard deviation of a stock or mutual fund or a benchmark is designated by sigma and is calculated by the formula sigma equals to the square root of the sum of squares of distance of each data from the mean of the set divided by the population of the data. Understood? Let me repeat that once again. Standard deviation of a stock or mutual fund or benchmark is calculated by the formula sigma equals to the square root of the sum of the squares of distance of each data from the mean of the set divided by the population of the data. Now this same formula is visible on your screen. I hope that works for now. Standard deviation is a measure of dispersion of returns around the mean. The greater the dispersion, the greater is the standard deviation, and hence greater the risk, and vice versa. Risk in a stock or a mutual fund is directly proportional to the standard deviation in its returns. High standard deviation means high risk, low standard deviation means low risk. Let's understand beta further. Let's consider a certain benchmark return, that is, return from indices like Nifty 50 or Sensex, and let it be designated by RBM, that is, return of the benchmark, designated by RBM, and let it be denoted by the white broken curve which you can see on your slide right now. Here we will consider three stocks or funds for three different conditions of beta. One, beta equal to 1, next beta greater than 1, and beta lesser than 1. Let's begin and assume beta equals to 1. So let us stock A, represented by the blue curve, bear the value of beta equal to 1. If beta of the stock or fund equals 1, then its return almost traces the return of the benchmark. It moves up and down almost with the benchmark like the blue curve does. If benchmark return RBM goes up by 10%, then stock return goes up by 10%. And if the benchmark return goes down by 10%, then the stock return goes down by 10%. Hence, stock return replicates the benchmark's return. Now let's consider the second condition. Consider the red curve, stock B. Now assume its beta to be greater than 1. So notice how it swings at extremes of the benchmark. Such a stock is typically a high beta stock. For such a stock as B, let's say beta equals to 1.2. Then, if benchmark return goes up by 10%, then stock return goes up by 12%. How? 10 into 1.2 makes it 12%. So if the benchmark return goes up by 10%, the return of the stock goes up by 12%. That is, it outperforms the benchmark. Such a stock is called a high beta stock and is good to have during a bullish or a rising market. But if the benchmark return goes down by 10%, then stock B's return will go down by 12%. That is, it will underperform the benchmark. Hence, it's undesirable to carry such a stock during bearish market. Let's look at the third condition where beta is less than 1. So let's consider a stock C, which has a beta of, let's say, 0.8. Now, in this case, if the return of the benchmark goes up by 10%, the return of the stock goes up by how much percentage? 0.8 into 10, that is only 8%. If the benchmark return goes up by 10%, in this case, the stock return goes up only by 8%. That is, it performs lesser than the benchmark. But at the same time, if the return of the benchmark goes down by 10%, the return of the stock goes only down by 8%. That is, it performs better than the benchmark. That is, it bears you less losses. So it's always a boon to have a low beta stock during a bearish market. I hope that is clear. So while expecting a bullish market, purchasing a high beta stock would be a good strategy. While expecting a bearish market, purchasing a low beta stock would be a good strategy. Now, can beta be negative? Yes, it can be negative. Stock with negative beta means inverse movements of stock. That is, when beta rises, that is, when benchmark rises by 10%, the stock falls by 10%, and vice versa. The motion of stock relative to the benchmark can be called as inverse movement. Negative beta stocks or entities add great values to portfolios. At times, when market crashes, these negative beta stocks tend to gain. An example can be gold. We have seen that during market crashes, people panic and tend to take shelter in gold investments, which in turn shoots up. Hence, when market goes down, gold may actually shoot up and hence behave like a negative beta entity. This is an example of negative beta. Now consider these figures. These figures show the regression line patterns of positive and negative beta stocks. Increase in benchmark returns make the regression line ramp upwards in case of a positive beta stock and ramp downwards in case of a negative beta stock. Consider the graphical linear representation. The broken brown line represents the benchmark returns. This has a beta of 1. You can see the broken brown line here. Okay. The black line has a beta higher than the benchmark, that is higher than 1. And the blue line has a beta lesser than the benchmark, that is lesser than 1. Just note the angles the blue and the black line make with the horizontal x-axis. The black line has a beta higher than the benchmark line because the angle at which the black line is inclined on the x-axis is greater than that of the angle of the benchmark. Can you see that? Okay. Similarly, the blue line has an angle lesser than that of the benchmark and hence has a beta lesser than 1. Also, the black line has an alpha that is positive because it intercepts y-axis at a point that is above 0 or the origin. Similarly, the blue line has an alpha that is negative as it intercepts the y-axis below the origin. The red line has a beta less than 0 or a negative beta, but the alpha is positive as it intercepts the y-axis above the origin. If a line is drawn parallel to the black line but in such a way that it intercepts y-axis below the origin, its beta will remain unchanged, but alpha will become negative. Similarly for the blue line. The new blue line still has a beta less than 1, but now has a positive alpha. A line parallel to the benchmark line, that is the green line, has a beta equal to 1, but a negative alpha as it passes the y-axis below the origin. If the same line is shifted above the origin, its beta remains as 1, but alpha changes to positive. I hope this clarifies how beta and alpha can be found out looking at a stock market line. Now, people use beta as a predictive tool for futuristic decisions, but it will be prudent to consider a few cautions involved with beta analysis. Beta is a historical measure. This means it looks backwards to be able to derive a value for itself, based on which investors and advisors try to predict future and take buying and selling decisions for the stock. Also, we have seen that it tends to change dynamically, which means it is not constant. Since it does not remain constant, the experiences from the past may not necessarily hold good for future. Hence, it's risky to take decisions for future based on the past performances and assuming the same continuity. Beta is affected by various factors. Beta changes with stock and market and movements in time. Beta changes with stock and market movements in time. Beta changes with granularity of the data, that is, whether the data is of daily returns, weekly returns, or yearly returns. Beta also changes with the time frames considered. Hence, a beta of past 1 year will be different than the beta of past 2 years or 3 years. So, which value of beta should be considered? Which beta is a correct beta? The answer is, there is nothing like a correct beta or an incorrect beta. Stock market is very unpredictable, and so is beta, and that should be kept in mind while taking financial decisions. Hence, beta should be considered not in isolation, but in the light of various other factors resulting from the technical and fundamental analysis of the stock or the fund. There are many other factors and ratios available from the data analysis, technical analysis, and fundamental analysis of historical performances of a stock or fund that should be considered. We will learn about all of them in the forthcoming videos. Now let's see how beta is computed. Basically, we are talking about the formula of beta. So beta for stock or fund can be defined or can be computed as the product of the ratio of standard deviation of fund to the standard deviation of benchmark and correlation of fund and the benchmark. I hope that's clear. So beta of a fund relative to its benchmark can be calculated as standard deviation of the fund designated by sigma f divided by standard deviation of the benchmark designated by sigma bm and multiplied by correlation between the fund and the benchmark, that is rho times FBM. So you can see the formula on your screen. Beta equals SD of fund, that is sigma F divided by SD, the standard deviation of benchmark, sigma BM, multiplied by rho FBM. Rho FBM means the correlation between the fund and the benchmark. Another formula to calculate beta is beta equals to the ratio of covariance between the stock and the benchmark to the variance of the benchmark. So beta equals to the ratio of covariance between the stock and the benchmark to the variance of the benchmark. So covariance of funds to benchmark divided by variance of the benchmark, that is beta. Also, beta can be derived from capital asset pricing model, that is the CAPM formula, using a line equation. In here, the returns of the stock or fund are plotted on a scatter plot against the returns of the benchmark, and a regression line is drawn using regression analysis. The equation of the line is derived in the form of y equals alpha plus beta x, where beta is the slope, that is beta equals delta y by delta x, and alpha is the intercept on the y-axis. Let's see how. Now consider a stock's daily return with respect to its benchmark. Let's plot all the points on a scatter plot like this. Now you can see a lot of blue dots here. All the blue dots are the returns of the stock plotted against the same day's return of the benchmark. This is called a scatter plot. Through these dots, we find one single line that best fits and best represents all the scattered points. That's our black line. Okay? But how did we draw this line? The procedure is called linear regression, and the method is called the method of ordinary least squares, or simply OLS. The vertical distance between a given dot and the regression line is called that dot's residual, or the error of the proposed line with respect to the single dot. Trying to get a better fit, I can try changing the slope of the line to go through a few desired points, but that will make the residuals associated with other dots very big. So that's not possible. So what do we do now? Now we minimize some combination of all the dots residuals. Statistics proposes the method of least squares. Hence we find one single line, also known as the line of best fit, that minimizes the squared distance between every dot, that is residual, and the proposed line. This regression line is also called the line of ordinary least squares and is represented by y equals alpha plus beta x. I hope we are clear till now. Okay, so for clarity, let's remove the dots and just look at the line. Now the slope beta equals to rise over run on the line, that is rise delta y over run delta x. Okay, also called as the stock beta, it tells us how much the stock co-moves with the market and thus is the measure of the stock's systematic risk. Note the intercept on the y-axis. This is called stock alpha. Now let's understand this with a real life example by plotting a benchmark's return against a stock's return. The table shows two sets of values. On the x-axis, we have the benchmark's return, benchmark like Nifty 50 or Sensex, or it can be Nasdaq or S&P 500 also. The other column, that is on the y-axis, we have returns from a stock or a mutual fund. It can be any stock or fund of the world. Now these values can be daily values or monthly values or any interval values. Typically, it should be done for 60 months or 5 years, but one can do it for 1 year or 3 years also. Now let's create a scatter plot of these points. Now once plotted, they look like this. Now we let the computer draw a line, or rather fit in a line through these dots. That's our red line. Now this line is the line of best fit, also known as the regression line. The line is drawn in such a way that the square distance between every dot and the line is a minimum. The line is drawn in such a way that the square distance between every dot and the line is a minimum. And from here it is also called the line of ordinary least squares, or simply OLS. Now please notice this equation shown just above that red line. It's y equals 0.910 times x plus 0.286 and r squared equals 0.979. Let's understand these entities better. The equation is also called the capital asset pricing model equation. It's the equation of a line and is designated by y equals beta times x plus alpha. Now compare it with the equation above. Hence the above equation says y equals 0.910x plus 0.286. So beta equals 0.910 and alpha equals 0.286. Now in this equation, beta is the slope of the line derived by delta y by delta x, and the current value being 0.910, and alpha is the intercept the line makes on the y-axis, and its current value is 0.286. Now r square is an outcome of the regression analysis, and it tells us how reliable our beta is. Now actually, for an r squared value greater than 0.8, that is 80%, the beta is considered to be reliable. It tells us how closely the dots around the regression line are placed. In this case, it is 97.9%, and thus beta derived is very reliable. So the value of r squared explains the total percentage accuracy of the existence of the line through the points and that the distance between the line and the points being minimal. If r squared is 1, that means that the line strictly passes from all the points. But the r squared value approaches 0 if the points are distributed at large distances from the line. Hence, a high value of r squared, like the one in our case, that is 97.9%, it denotes that the line almost passes through maximum number of points and hence has least errors, and that the points almost form a straight line, and hence the slope of the line beta is reliable. The inference that should be drawn is that a high r squared value explains the strength of correlationship between the benchmark and the stock movements. A low value of r squared means that the benchmark and stock returns have low correlationship. Now, for an r squared value approaching 0, it means minimal or no relationship between the returns of the benchmark and the returns of the stock, and hence beta will not be reliable in such cases. So that's all in this video. I hope you found the content adequate and relevant to your need. In future videos, we will learn more about mutual funds like CAPM, ratios associated with mutual funds like Sharpe ratio, Treynor ratio, Sortino ratio. There's a lot coming up. So if you like this video and want to stay connected to learn more about mutual funds, do give it a thumbs up and do subscribe to this channel. You can send in your comments in the comment box along with your suggestions also. So let's keep in touch. Stay at home, stay safe, have a good day. Bye bye.